All right, welcome everybody. This is the Real Crusades History live stream. I'm J. Stephen Roberts, and this is the Wandering Sword Project with me. And we're here to talk about medieval warfare.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So, how's everybody doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Awesome.
Right.
Thanks for having us again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's always good to have you guys. So just want to make sure I introduce everybody. We have with us today Kyle. Kyle, how's it going?
Good.
Kyle Potts of the Wandering Sword Project. And also with us today is Spencer Waddell. Is that how you pronounce your name, Spencer?
Yeah, you're correct. You're awesome.
Good. All right. Spencer Waddell is with us. Welcome, Spencer. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And we've also got Mike William Rain with us, joining us here as well from the Wandering Sword Project. Welcome, Mike.
Happy to be here again. Thank you.
So as a lot of you guys will know, this is a portion of our stunt team for the upcoming TV series Knights of the Cross. So really glad to have these guys with us. This is the group that we have been working with on the Knights of the Cross project. These guys were with us for the trailer. And these three are very talented reenactors and historical interpreters who do a great job of helping us recreate the Crusades era for the Knights of the Cross TV show, which is coming soon. So we're going to get into that today. But yeah, our topic for today is, of course, ask us anything about medieval warfare.
And there's already like so many questions.
Yeah, kind of. Wow.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Joe, you lead us. Whatever questions you want, we'll address them as best we can.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to get into all these. We appreciate you guys already coming at us with quite a few questions. And before we, I like that one. Did the Crusaders fight clean or dirty? Anyway, but before we get into that, I want to kind of, bring our attention back to the Knights of the Cross project. I'm going to share something I made. This is a little kind of a bumper that's going to be on a lot of my videos coming up soon. So I'm just going to play this for everybody so we can check it out here.
Excellent.
Knights of the Cross is an upcoming historical drama TV show about the Crusades, created by ChristianChannel.com and Real Crusades History. At last, Richard the Lionheart, Saladin, and all the adventure of the Crusades in a TV series that's faithful to the history. Check out the link in the description below to watch the official trailer and learn about how you can help make the Knights of the Cross TV series a reality. Join us at ChristianChannel.com/Knights of the Cross. All right.
Nice voiceover, Joe.
Yeah, nice work.
Thanks. So yeah, that's just kind of a little edit of our trailer. I think it looks good. Yeah, I think it kind of like adds a different feel to the trailer, more of just like rapid fire, imagery from the trailer. I think everybody looked good in it. So cool.
That was very cool. I like how it put together. It's just like bam, bam, bam. Like you like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's exactly what we want to do. Like we want to make a realistic show with cool action that comes from a place of reality instead of big fantasy, which is definitely not done enough.
Yes. And just to make sure everybody knows all about this project, I'm going to go ahead and share the website here. So, Knights of the Cross is an historical drama TV series about the Crusades that we are creating together. And you guys can check out the crowdfund page here for it at ChristianChannel.com/Knights of the Cross. This gives you all the info about the show, everything you'd want to know about how you can help support it. You can check out the trailer right here. So yeah, very cool. Get in there, guys. Check it out, and we will get on with our stream for today. So, all right. So yeah, again, the topic for today is ask us anything about medieval warfare. I thought that was a really good topic for this particular group. Everybody here knows a lot about this. And one of the things we've talked a lot about is how reenactors like these guys are able to approach history from a unique way, in that let's actually get a feel for how this warfare happened in real life by participating in it. And I think that, you guys really bring that to the table. And that's one of the things that makes these streams so interesting. So let's get into that. We got a bunch of questions already. Let's start. This is a comment. I'm excited for Knights of the Cross. Thank you, Mud Bucket. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I like that our first question is a statement.
That's
and
right.
the answer is yes, we are too.
We are. And this is probably a good one for you guys. You guys can let me know what you think. When did curved or molded kite shields become common in England? Were flat kite shields used at Stamford Bridge and Hastings?
I'll take this one if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So, Battle of Hastings, there's definitely evidence in the Bayeux Tapestry that the shields were curved. I actually have like a great big Bayeux Tapestry hanging above my stairs. Like I can literally look at it right now. So you see at the tops that they were curved. Curved shields started becoming common around the time stirrups were invented. So when people started figuring out you could wear stirrups and ride, they started making curved shields because the ability to hit someone from the top of your horse just got a lot easier. To be an armor on top of your horse was easier, so you could get heavier. And that started the trend that you see towards 500 years later, where you've got, people head to toe in full plate, which, isn't happening in the 1050s, but, that's where it goes. That's the very start of that process. So yeah, around then you see curved shields as soon as horses do.
All right, nice. Did anybody have anything to add to that, or should we press on here?
I thought it was interesting. Now, I'm not a big shield and sword person in my martial arts. It's mostly been either two weapon or either pole arms or single sword. Kyle and Mike, what do you guys like better, flat or curved shields?
Curved. Yeah, we both know the answer to that one.
No, why is that though?
So yeah, Mike, you go ahead, man. Why do you like them? I'll let you answer. I answered the last one.
Well, I like a slight curve, but really, well, actually, I got my shield right here.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
So with a slight curve in the shield, it moves the center of balance of the shield to where it's actually like somewhere in my forearm. So when I've got the strap on my arm here and I'm fighting, I can have the shield pretty much full extension all day long, and it doesn't feel like it weighs anything because of the way that it is strapped and the way that it's attached to my arm and where the center of balance is. So I can move it freely without any kind of hindrance.
Yeah, it gives you room for your elbow and arm to fit in there.
Yeah.
And the other physics thing I like about it is that if it curves and it's held tight against your body, it'll curve closer to your body, so it's harder to hit you. A flat shield will stick out.
Yeah.
That being said, with like a center boss shield, a flat is better because center bosses are pushed outward aggressively a lot of times. Like when you see like the classic Viking shield, this big circle metal boss, you extend that forward and it's bigger than it is here. And so that makes a big difference for that. But that's, are you going to be on horseback at all? Are you, what's the style of warfare of the time? And so that's a big factor too.
Cool. Just wondering, thought some of the viewers might want to know.
So these three questions kind of go together, so I'm going to group them all together. We got from Legionnaire Fury, how many women participated in the Crusades? And a Crusader asks, were women allowed to fight in the Crusades? And then finally, Will Herman asks, how common were female fighters? Were there any Mulan situations of women pretending to be men in order to fight? So that's three questions that kind of go together. I'll start off just by saying a lot of women participated in the Crusades, but then I'll let you guys jump in and if somebody wants to answer kind of the more general question about women in combat.
So one story that pops out that I remember is the green cloaked woman in the First Crusade, and this was like kind of a folk tale, but she used a bow, fought on the hill for, gosh, now I can't even think of the battle name, but it was a common folklore story at the time. So at the very least, they had stories like Mulan 900 years ago. But I think that there's plenty of examples of female knights. There's a knight, a word for a female knight, a
Chevalier?
Chevalier. No, it's, hold on, my French is bad. Chivalress.
Yeah.
Chivalress. And then dame instead of sir were used specifically for female knights. So that comes a little later, but you know, there's definitely evidence that it wasn't just a boys' club.
Well, I think the story you're referring to is Florina of Burgundy, I believe was her name, Kyle. And yeah, the idea, she was married to a Swedish nobleman, and they had like a last stand up in Asia Minor somewhere. And yeah, it is kind of a legendary type thing. A little bit of legend, a little bit of history. But yeah, in terms of the general question, how common were women? I mean, women definitely were, you know, a part of the nobility. There were like actually knightly orders of women for sure. But in terms of how much actual fighting did women do, I think the answer would have to be very, very little. I mean, it wasn't really like women weren't, you know, trained as knights in the way that men were. Women, they were involved in hunting. Like we have like images of noble women like riding, shooting bows and arrows, stuff like that. And archery probably was a thing that you know noble women maybe did as kind of sport type thing. But I think you know, like the TV show Vikings is kind of a classic example. They've got like, you know, Viking girls out there, kind of, you know, with the guys, and that's, I mean, if we're honest about it, that's probably mostly fantasy. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well,
Yeah,
they're going Norse there, and in the sagas, in the Norse sagas, and even in some of the legal, they were pretty progressive, even by today's, like, women could divorce their husbands, own land, and etc. And I mean, the legends of the Valkyries.
Yeah, I think that it's somewhere between didn't happen at all and like a 50-50 split equal to all the men and the women, you know, like it's definitely not there either. But it's tough to say. Like it was definitely not the average person was probably going to be a male warrior, just like in every other culture throughout history.
And then I'd agree that it's slim that someone would sneak in, like the whole Mulan situation. But I believe it did happen over documented sources of how many times. Not as much during the Crusades. You start to see that sometime in the later periods where people would dress as in more of the Renaissance, where you'd have women dress in men's clothing and you wouldn't be able to tell as much and they'd still fight in some things. That happened more. But yeah, not sure.
Yeah, I think we can look at somebody like Joan of Arc as kind of an interesting example. I mean, she not even just the women thing, but it kind of plays into this issue that came up in medieval Latin culture of God kind of using someone who's small and humble and, you know, from a lower class to do some great thing. This was kind of a common thing in sort of almost like the culture, the mythos that medieval Latin Christians thought about. Because, you know, it's the idea of the meek shall inherit the earth. God raises up someone meek to do something amazing. Joan of Arc is kind of a good example of that. I mean, she's like a poor, you know, peasant girl, and God uses her to take on this high task. She puts on armor. She didn't actually fight in campaigns, but she was like a leadership figure, a figurehead type figure who, you know, rallied the troops and inspired, you know, courage in the face of trial. So, yeah, cool. Let's look at some other questions here. Pregnant Pope. So, here's a good one. This is from Josef Marzloff. How do you guys prepare yourselves for the stunts to make them the most realistic? What do you think, guys?
Can I start that off a little bit?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, when we look at what we want to do for our stunts, we run through it and we make it as realistic as possible. However, then we have to look at it what translates to the viewer as well, and that's what gets interesting. Because Kyle, if you want to go like talk about how a real fight actually plays out.
Yeah, a real fight's boring. Like what me and Spencer would do when we were coming up with the first preliminary draft of the choreography for the show is I was like, okay, Spencer, I know in reality I would just do this, and that would be half the fight from the feint where I'm like, am I going to hit your leg? And then you respond with a slight shuffle, and then boom, I'm able to fit a thrust in. Cool, but boring, you know? So we had to be like, okay, this is a setup. Can we believe it? Now, does it look good? You know, so we had to play both angles of real and looks cool, and then, you know, use it accordingly.
Yeah. And Mike and I are actually working on a short choreography for a documentary we're doing right now that has just a little bit. And we can't talk a whole lot about it, but we had to look at the angles. We had to look at like the weapons. Like, Mike, what did you think about some of the things we made up?
Well, yeah, you got to pay attention to camera angles, of course, because I don't want to actually stab my buddy and kill him, because that would be super realistic, but I like you.
These special effects are great.
I appreciate that. Next day coming in with an eye patch, like, oh.
But yeah, I mean, as far as preparation goes and how do we make it realistic, I think, you know, maybe they don't know, but every single one of us, I've been actually fighting in armored combat for 17 years. I know Kyle's got a couple on me. Spence, you're somewhere.
I've been doing martial arts since I was 8, and I'm 35 now. But
so,
yeah, the years are racking up quick.
They're crazy, man. But yeah, we've all been in real fights forever, so we know what that is and what that looks like. But we're also huge cinephiles and love movies, so we know it's exciting, and it's a tightrope walk that we're doing when we're plotting these fight scenes and whatnot, because we want to throw in the cool I-33 stuff, but we're going to do it in such a way that it looks really cool on camera.
Yep. And the biggest part is, as we know, with something that you guys, the viewers, and we talked to before, like, what do you want to see in the show? And people wanted to see realistic moves. And Kyle was like, good, I want to put in realistic moves, but then we also have to add some flashiness, but make it believable. So really, we just run through the stunts. We drill and drill and drill. We have plastic trainer weapons, but then something that the Wandering Sword prides herself with is we actually do our stunts with real steel, which a lot of actors and other things are like, don't use real steel and doing this wise. But we actually do use real steel because we're practiced and we want it to look good. And you can see when you get into a fight with some of the foam weapons and other things they use in Hollywood, the weapons flex. So we want it to have the realistic look to it.
Yeah, and Joe, it looks like you brought up our page here.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
I want to show everyone.
The Wandering Sword project is just like let you guys know what where we come from. It's a nonprofit that Spencer and I created, and we have made it nonprofit because there's a bunch of big things that we want to do for sword education. Like, we just want to travel, show people different swords, showcase different cultures, different time periods, and just like show off cool things about swords that we learned over the years. And then bring in our buddies and talk swords about it and show things. And yeah, we've got a podcast tomorrow for anyone that wants to tune in, and we'll be going over some of the big stuff we're doing. And yeah, Spencer, actually, you should tell them just a little bit about our educational stuff that we're doing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a predominant teacher for the nation of historical African martial arts. So for the whole United States in this movement, part of the HAM Association, where we talk about all the vast martial arts from anywhere from Northern Africa all the way down to the middle. You get into like the whole Zulu, you get into a lot of different, with the Mamluks as well. It's just all over the place. And we get to do with all the different weapons that people aren't privy to. Kyle's also an accomplished historical European martial artist. So it's all about teaching martial arts across the world. And when we were working on this venture for the Crusade, we were happy enough to be like, all right, let's put some stuff in here. We get to do a lot of the historical European martial arts stuff. We get to use a lot of historical African martial arts, as far as some of the Mamluks from the Saracens. And we're actually going to be working on a project with Marquette University, doing physics of weapons and swords and seeing the center of mass and all cool things there. So we have a lot of different progress. So as far as reenactors, we're also historians. So it's really fun. So Exactly. So a long run thing for stunts is we try to make it so it's realistic, yet we're also showing how history works along with weapons. But it's interesting because you just don't want to pump fake and then someone gets stabbed and be done. So we got to make it look good for you.
Yeah. Yep. We might have like an extra get pump faked and then snapshot and be done. But for an overall story, we've got to tell it in film, not just be real.
Yeah, these guys really are artists in terms of their ability to create historical combat and situations. I mean, I got to see that up close working with them when we were filming our trailer for Knights of the Cross. So, yeah, guys, check out the Wandering Sword Project YouTube channel. It's up there right there. You'll just find it by searching Wandering Sword Project. Sub to them, give them a sub. Check out their regular live streams. It's very fun, very good education. A lot of good, topics on medieval history. So definitely.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate
Absolutely. That. And just to kind of jump back to the topic at hand today, I want to remind everybody to please check out christianchannel.com/Knights of the Cross. This is the page to visit. Knights of the Cross, of course, is an historical drama TV series about the Crusades that I'm working on with the Wandering Sword Project and also with christianchannel.com, who's going to host the show. We want to get everybody over to this page, check it out, see where you want to help us. There's a lot of different options for supporting the show. You can even be on the show yourself. So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff to check out over there. So, all right, guys, let's get back to some questions here. Everybody's coming up with some really good questions. Let's see here.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I'm looking through these. I like all of them.
I know. Let's see here.
Glad it's not my job to pick.
You guys can pick one if you want. You guys.
Oh, yeah, to open your mouth.
You have one in mind, Spencer?
Oh, no, I can't see them. I'm on my phone. So,
okay. Let's see here. There was one about wounded. There's a couple about wounded people and that kind of thing. Like, did common survivors from both bands were acclaimed back home? I guess that's more about. Here's one. What happened to deserters in the Crusades? It's kind of a good. Also, we could sort of broaden that to just what happened to deserters in medieval warfare in general. And I would say most of them probably nothing. They just probably ran away and that's it. But somebody up here asked about Templars who deserted, and that could be a problem because the Templars, Hospitallers were very organized tightly. And yeah, if you deserted in that case, there were some pretty stiff penalties. I think all the way up to death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I believe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go for it, Kyle. Go.
It's such a big question because there's so many different types of soldiers. Are you a knight? You have a certain duty in the feudal system. Are you a feudal levy who's a peasant and you just have to farm? What are they going to do? Stop, cut your legs off so you can't farm in the spring? You're kind of just, you might have some bad things happen to you, but at the end of the day, maybe nothing. Maybe it'll be terrible. It's really, really subjective to location and, who you are in the feudal hierarchy. However, if you're a knight and you have to go back home and your feudal lord is like, hey, aren't you that guy that just ran away while we were there? You're probably in danger of losing everything.
And that's the part I was going to say. I believe there's a documented case where they had one of the knights that were in fealty to their lords and they left earlier in lieu of they're like, this isn't going to work out the way I want. I don't want to be there. And when they came back after they seized his lands and took away a lot of his stuff, and they're like, yep, so that's what happens when you don't fight for me. You don't get to keep your stuff.
Yeah, your reputation was everything back then if you were above the peasant levy level, because your neighbors might take your stuff at any time. You had to defend your stuff against your neighbor taking your stuff. If your neighbor wasn't afraid of you, he might take your stuff, which sounds barbaric to us in the modern day where we have laws that are enforced top down. But back then, you better have a reputation.
Or have strong family ties.
Yep.
Yeah, probably one of the most famous quote-unquote deserters during the Crusades would be Philip II of France, who left right after the Siege of Acre. And that was kind of considered like he had broken his vow. I mean, he was a king, but it was definitely a shame on him. And you can read chronicles from years later where even French chroniclers are saying, man, you know, the King of England, King Richard, he was doing better than our king back then because he deserted. So yeah, good answer from everybody. This is a good one you guys might know. This is from Alexander. When did pikes become common?
Well, you got a different. Kyle? What's the difference between a pike and a spear?
How much metal's on the end of it, and if you can slash with it, but you can slash with a spear.
Yeah. Spear's been around since forever.
Yep, spear is one of our very first weapons. There's kind of a good answer to that because I think what he's getting at is like, you know, when did the weapon start becoming like you see blocks of pikemen? And when I say that, blocks of these people using pole weapons that are not in ancient Greece. Because, so like, if we jump away from that, you start seeing the bill hook in the 1200s, which is like a cool English weapon. It's imagine like a butcher's cleaver, and then it has like a little beak on the end of it on the front, and you would put that on a 7.5-foot stick and smash people. People started realizing it was really effective in Bavaria in the it came around the 1250s. Towards the 1300s, basically a bunch of knights were having some kind of battle with a bunch of poor Bavarians, and the poor Bavarians couldn't afford weapons, so they made a bunch of bill hooks. And they felled some trees. All of the knights rode their horses into the woods, and then they couldn't use their horses, and all of the Bavarian peasants came down with pole weapons, and they were like, smash, chopped everyone to death, and they were like, that worked really well. What if we sold our services as a mercenary group to the next guys? And so then you start seeing these like mercenary companies of people that specialize in bill hooks become more and more common. So
where did that start again, Kyle?
Bavaria.
Bavaria. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a little bit later medieval history. That's good stuff.
Yeah. We wouldn't see that in the time of like our Third Crusade show. Like it wasn't a thing that you would have big groups of polearm fighters yet. It's advanced technology.
But it's really cool and effective.
And what do you guys think about this one? This is from Legionnaire. Which weapon is more effective, a bow or crossbow?
In what context?
Yeah.
It also depends where you're at and where you live. There's so many things.
Those English longbows, you're talking a 200-pound draw weight shooting an arrow that's a 1/4 inch thick. That's going to punch through a lot of armor. But then you've got crossbows later on that can get up to some pretty insane weights as well, and more people can use them. So
the interesting thing about that, Wise, is it takes a lot more skill to learn how to shoot a longbow.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot less skill for a crossbow, because a crossbow is basically a mechanical gun. Granted, even though with the pull or either the stirrup pull, that's a little bit harder there, but you can give someone a crossbow, have them shoot it a couple of days, be like, shoot at this target, and then they get good enough. Even though this is not in the realm of our history-wise, it was predominant in the Chinese army-wise. They have their farmers, and they have all these farmers-wise. They're like, hey, we need to go defend Mongolians or take all this other stuff. Here, we're now putting you into our ranks. Here's a crossbow. Bang, bang, shoot, get stuff. Now go back to farming. So you don't have to have a whole train of militia. You just give them a mechanical gun and come back. Now, that being said, in Japan, they couldn't have crossbows because Japan's an island that has a lot of corrosion because of the ocean and sea. So all of the mechanical bits in the crossbow wouldn't work. That's why they had a lot of yumis, or the big, long Japanese bows. So
that's an interesting fact about Japan. I didn't realize that the weather there would make it tough to
it made a big difference.
Yeah.
That's why you didn't see a lot of Japanese crossbows, if any.
Another fun fact about the crossbow is it was actually outlawed because it was too easy to kill a knight with it.
Yep.
So it was like modern day gun laws were applied to crossbows back then. Like you couldn't just go out and get one. If you were found with one, it was bad.
Yep.
And the reason is exactly what Spencer said. There's no training involved. Like, you are just able to pick it up and you can get one shot off and you might kill a fully armored knight.
And they're not. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. So they were outlawed to be used against Christians, but you were allowed to use them against Saracens or Muslims. So in the Crusades, they started seeing a warfare use again. It had a big comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, crime factor. Yeah, and it's interesting because knights, you see the pictures, I forget the documentation, but there's one where it has a knight and he looks like a big porcupine because he was shot with all these arrows, but they didn't go through his gambas and they went through the metal, that part there, and they're fine. And then they get ransom, right? So that's why knights weren't get killed often. They're like, no. I get ransom and I get to go home. So if it's actually killing knights, they're like,
no, we don't like that. Please stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that ban on crossbows held too well, as I understand it.
No, killing machines are killing machines.
Exactly. There's too many people that wanted an edge in warfare.
So here's a good one. Actually, this was not before the Crusaders. The Mongols were kind of parallel with and toward the 13th century. So, but Holmes says, why did the Mongols stop their advance when the Middle East and Europe was there for the taking? What do you think, guys? That's one of the classic medieval history questions.
I got some of this, but I'll let you guys go if you want.
Man, I got 2 rabbit holes I could go down, Spencer. You go first.
Okay.
And if you didn't hit them, I'll hit them.
No. I think I'll just talk about a little bit part where you talk about Genghis or Genghis part, wherever you hear it there. They said when they started getting farther west, and then he died, things started to break upon and have different cultural, like, it broke into different tribes, and they're like, I want to keep this, I want to keep going. And they're like, no, keep going. So they weren't able to organize as well as they wanted to. However, some people said if he stayed alive, that he probably would have kept on going and going and going and going. But I'll let Kyle, you go to more your rabbit hole.
Okay, so hear me out. Because just like people are always like, who would win, a samurai or a knight? You hear always the same thing, like who would win, like Genghis Khan or like any medieval battle. So I've put some thought into that, and it's all hypothetical. So this is as real as if someone said like who would win in a fight, like Evander Holyfield or any other boxer from any other era. You like Muhammad Ali or Evander Holyfield?
Yeah.
So
keep going.
The warfare that made Mongols so effective was horse archery, which worked great in the open. It worked great when you don't have narrow mountains to go down and when you're not attacking stone fortified castles. They didn't have a lot of the same, like they had stone castles, of course, but it wasn't the same way. And Europe was really fast on building those up in the 1200s. So Europe's love of narrow fighting at locations, defensive fortified warfare, long range weapons that could eventually, like, you can outshoot short bowed men on horse with a longbow. So they would have a static advantage if they're not tricked into like pursuing or the not caught up position or all that other details of warfare, which makes it pure fantasy. I think that it would have been extremely hard and would have required a new form of warfare for them to move into the Balkans and start conquering in there. That's pure conjecture of where I poured like thousands of my own nerd hours reading about the types of warfare into that. But I don't think it could have been done as easily as they say. That being said, some of the battles, like where they wrecked the Ukraine and Poland, are super fascinating. But those are all maneuver warfare and betrayal reasons, not a true testament of one warfare style versus the other.
Yeah, I guess
this guy gets it.
To kind of follow up on what
This guy gets it.
The castles thing. And one thing I've read about is the Hungarians, for example, after they first got really hit hard by the Mongols, they really started building a lot of castles, and that made it to where the Mongols had a lot of trouble the next time they showed up. So
yeah. And I would venture, just to be pot stirrer, I think they would have figured out more battering rams. I think they would have did some stuff there, but then they would have had to go away from more of their nomadic lifestyle and actually start building things and go. It wouldn't be worth their time. And at this point, you're thousands and thousands of miles away from your end.
Yep.
Yeah.
And something I went to go, guys. Oh, go ahead.
No, there's easier targets than a big fortified castle, and that's way more appealing.
Yeah. And something that. Oh.
Man, we keep it up. You go ahead.
Well, we got Resident Carolean says the Chinese had everything you're saying, were way more organized.
Organized, yeah. Except for so we had the whole Mulan question wise, and it made me think about this. So if you guys haven't seen the new Disney Mulan, which I think is it's interesting, the guy, the main big bad, who was supposed to be the big like Genghis Khan, he had a weapon that looked like this in his one hand with 2 holes, which was actually an African trumbush. So they had him have this and a long sword. And there's one clip where he's running up the side of the castle. I was like, what the heck is he doing with an African weapon? That's goofy. But I just had to go and get mine and show it. So, yeah, look that up. I don't know how they got that in Mongolia, but whatever.
So I see Resident Carolee and the Chinese had everything you're saying were way more organized. Their castles were different. They weren't as fortified as ruthlessly as European castles. When I was there and in China and I looked at a lot of the castles, they're super cool, but they're not. They're just built differently. And the other thing is they're really close. In China, you're right next to the Mongols. they're all going to be there all the time. Whereas in Europe, you have to make a significant effort to move that many people over. It's just a little different.
All right, here's a good one you guys might like. What weapons and clothing armor did your typical foot soldier have, specifically during the First Crusade? You guys will probably all know this one.
Yeah, Mike, you go ahead. We've been ranting a bunch, and I know you know this one.
Oh, well, typical foot soldier, you're talking a long padded gambesson and chausses, probably. He's going to have a nice kite shield and a spear. That's going to be his primary. He might have a sword as his secondary. Swords in general were like your sidearm in medieval warfare. And yeah, that's really going to be about it. If he was like a man at arms, he might be in chainmail, like we see in your in your picture there, actually. But yeah, that would be your typical foot soldier.
Yeah, we'd like to, like when we think of, in the Middle Ages they wore armor, it was rare. Like you're only talking the top 10 to 20% of a force is going to be that like head to toe chainmail with a nasal helmet, like shield ready to go. That was your elite troops. That was rare. Most guys, like Mike said, they're wearing a padded gambesson and a leather hat. Nasal helm, exactly.
Yeah, if they were from like a unit underneath a pretty wealthy lord who felt like giving all of his regular troops nasal helms, but even that could be expensive.
Yeah, it could just be like an iron cap, or maybe even not even something that good. So another good one up here. Somebody asked, this is one I do not know the answer to, so I'll just throw it out there. Did the Byzantines or Ottomans have any personal firearms during the Siege of Constantinople? Could they have?
I don't know, man. That's an area that I know a little bit less than others.
Yeah,
I've been slowly getting into more Ottoman information, but I don't have enough to pull it up like that, sadly.
Yeah, man, you stumped us. Master 101. You've stumped us on the gun question.
They were definitely using cannon to fire at the walls of Constantinople. We know that.
What time period or what year was that around? Does anyone know? 100%?
1453.
So I don't know. I just know Japanese-wise.
Oh, no, lost him.
What happened?
Probably lost his connection. I think what he was going to say, I'm going to guess here. Let's see if I'm right. He was going to say the Japanese had some gunpowder at this time. Gunpowder was in use at this time because we start seeing it in the Joan of Arc era. That was one of the theories of why she was so successful. Is they started adapting gunpowder before the English did.
But as far as like personal firearms,
exactly. I can't speak for that battle either, just because I don't know.
Cannon, sure, but nothing like a gun that we would think of. I don't think.
And Bahamut Zero asks, was the nasal helm still used on the Third Crusade? And the answer is definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And Oliver Kukuk asks, oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. I was trying to get to this one from Marlboro. I see what you did there. Is it true that Raynald of Chatillon killed Saladin's sister? That's actually not from any of the original sources. That's kind of a later myth, and would have been pretty unlikely anyway.
I always thought that was just like Kingdom of Heaven.
It is. Yeah, that's the Kingdom of Heaven thing. Let's see. What happened to, I guess Spencer's probably trying to get back on.
Yeah, I sent him a message.
Okay.
Let's just keep an eye out, see if he hops back on or say something back.
All right. And then somebody asked, this is an interesting one. Smart Man asks, could medieval Europe conquer Africa? And that's an interesting question because there were 2 crusades launched against Egypt, the 5th Crusade and 7th Crusade, both of which did not succeed at all. So I guess in that case, the answer would be no.
In the 7th Crusade, didn't he conquer Egypt? Or was that just like real fleeting? Like he raided Egypt?
Well, he took that was King Louis IX. He took Damietta, and then he went on toward Cairo, and they had a big battle, and the Muslims won. And that
okay.
And that was a major failure. But the interesting thing about that is, we have to remember that like Egypt, for example, was one of the wealthiest areas in the Mediterranean world in the 13th century. Like it's not like it. I mean, France was comparatively not quite as powerful and wealthy a kingdom as Ayyub in Egypt at that point. So I mean, Egypt was, as the Crusades went on, Egypt became like, there was like this sense that, okay, we need to conquer Egypt if we're really going to hold Jerusalem long term. And Egypt is a tough nut to crack. I mean, it's been a tough area to conquer throughout history. So, all right, here's one from our good buddy Sam. We love Sam.
Yep, Sam. Hope you're having a great day.
Thanks, Sam.
And he's telling us that the earliest handguns appeared at the end of the 13th century. They were basically mini hand cannons.
Yeah, the handguns with the O. You held it like a bazooka, and you had to light the thing, and it was just like a shrapnel cannon for scaring horses. That was its most effective use for quite a while.
Oh, no.
Is that your Facebook beeping, Kyle?
Don't worry. Seto just said that he was on his phone. It overheated in the sun.
Oh, man. Yeah, you can't like in the Middle Ages, you can't take your cell phone into battle.
Nope. Lesson learned.
Yeah. There we go.
There he is.
There he is.
Sorry, my phone, it's overheated because it's hot outside.
Yeah. That's what happens if you take it into battle, too. If you take your phone into... Especially if you're trying to conquer Egypt.
Yeah.
All right.
Hitting that lithium battery is a bad day.
All right. So... whoa. Come on, Spencer. Let's see here. A couple good. Well, actually, let's go ahead and jump back to. Here's Spencer's back.
Sorry.
That's cool. Let's remind everybody what this is all about today. We're going to watch my little promo video about Knights of the Cross that I made from our trailer. Wait, where'd it go? Hold on. All right, so there we go.
I saw Sam did something cool again. What did he do?
Oh, he just posted. Had some points.
All right.
We wished him a good day.
Excellent.
Knights of the Cross is an upcoming historical drama TV show about the Crusades, created by ChristianChannel.com and Real Crusades history. At last, Richard the Lionheart, Saladin, and all the adventure of the Crusades in a TV series that's faithful to the history. Check out the link in the description below to watch the official trailer and learn about how you can help make the Knights of the Cross TV series a reality. Join us at ChristianChannel.com/Knights of the Cross.
All right. So that's what we're talking about today, guys, is Knights of the Cross, the TV show. I'm here with the reenactors who are making it happen, the Wandering Sword Project. And I'm going to jump back over to the website here one more time before we get back to questions. ChristianChannel.com/Knights of the Cross. Please, everybody, jump over to this page. Check out what we're doing here. Knights of the Cross is a crowd-funded series about the Crusades. This is going to show you everything about it, all about supporting us. Each of these different tiers of support come with their own rewards, everything from owning a digital copy of the season all the way up to even being in the show yourself. So there's a lot of options here for getting involved. So yeah, everybody check out christianchannel.com/Knights of the Cross. Get in on the action. And having said that, I will say one of the great things about working on this whole project has been working with this group of reenactors I'm talking with right now. Kyle, Mike, and Spencer, who did so much when we were working on the trailer to bring the thing to life. So yeah, you guys are really a huge part of this, and I'm glad you guys are on board.
So are we. We're having fun, man.
Thank you.
This is like, hey, come talk to us about your favorite thing. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah.
Twist my arm.
So it looks like everybody's still talking about cannons in the chat here.
I saw someone ask about the Last Duel. That new, what is it, Matt Damon and
Trailer looks good.
I think
We'll see.
Look,
I don't know.
It's 14th century. I thought, from what I saw in the trailer, the armor looked pretty good, with the exception of those weird helmets. But I think that's again just like they're making a film and they've got their big name actors, and you want to see your big name actor's face, so they made something. They did what they could, but I mean, they're wearing Corazinas, and it looks pretty cool to me.
Right.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
All right.
I like the Emperor.
This is
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
What kind of weapons would the Crusaders in the First Crusade plus Reconquista have employed? Swords, spears, blunt weapons, or others?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to get technical here, Mike already brought up the spears, blunt weapons, of course, because not everyone can afford much more than peasant weapons, because peasant levies outfitted themselves a lot of times. You would see maces, which were sweet, and we made a huge effort. Spencer was so big on this, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I totally agree. We used a ton of maces in the filming of the show because it's a very common weapon, and it's underutilized. Like, you don't see it all the time. You always see the sword because we like the swords, but most dudes had maces. Most dudes had spears. So we tried to reflect that in Knights of the Cross. And you know what, Joe? This reminds me of something you brought up on me and Spencer's podcast a couple weeks ago. You asked about the differences between Japanese swords and the arming sword. And that got me thinking that the arming sword is actually like 10 different kinds of swords. And most people just call it like a single-handed sword, but there's the oak-shot typology that breaks it down. So to be more specific on this question they brought up, which types of swords did they use? They used oak-shot type 10s, type 11s, and type 12s. I mean, type 12 was later Crusades, high technology. Most of them would have been type 10s or 11s, which 11 was used on horseback because it was a longer blade. And 10 was a choppy, sweet chop sword that would cut through anything. Yeah. And 12 was that, but they're like, but what if we also stab sometimes? So
right.
Different blade shapes.
Somebody had asked about two-handed swords, and in the Crusades time period, not a thing.
Yep, not a thing. They're super cool though, but not a thing.
Super cool, but not they're 14th century.
And right here we got, this is Spencer's, one of his maces that he made for the trailer, and here it is in action. Just wanted to kind of show that up here. It's pretty cool.
And this will be more simulating, like, basically if you had slag or metal or any kind of lead and you put it on the end of a stick, and that would get the job done. They were one-handed maces and two-handed maces in period around that time still.
Why did you choose the two-handed mace for yourself, Spencer?
Because it just looks more foreboding. When we were trying to like make our big bag or our second in line or whatever we want to say, you want to have an enforcer's weapon. And guys, when we were shooting this, and even though we practiced this multiple times, and the mace may have gotten close to Kyle's head once or twice, but it was scary enough that it made Kyle actually bring up his shield because he was like, I don't want to get hit with that.
It was terrifying. You're right. You chose a terrifying weapon. I agree.
Effective weapon
Mhm.
though, and
Yep.
simple. You know.
Mm-hmm. Blunt trauma is the real deal.
And Sam gave us another contribution here. Thanks, Sam. He says, Richard's see the Aziz of arms issued by Richard's father for what every level of society was supposed to be able to bring to battle. So yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of good records from Henry II's reign in terms of stuff like that. So
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
all right. So we had a question too about heavy cavalry in the East that I thought was kind of cool. Where is that? Was there no heavy cavalry comparable to the medieval knights in the East at the time? Did Islamization of the East destroy all Persian customs of heavily armored horsemen? Thoughts, guys?
When you talk about heavily ordered horsemen, oh, sorry, go, Kyle.
It's kind of complicated because, the Byzantines liked heavy armored stuff for a while, and the warfare started to reflect more the light cav preference for the Muslims and Saracens at the time. So I think it's more logistical. It's really hard to outfit a fully heavy knight in heavy gear in the desert where there's no water. It's harder. And then since their warfare, light cav, ambush tactics, bows from horseback were really popular. You didn't see a use for that, but you also, especially in the First Crusade, the technology for your heavy armor isn't as good in the Saracens as it is in the Europeans. When those dudes rolled in with chainmail, this was like science fiction armor that they could get hit 3 times, not care, and just like murder somebody. And the Saracens were like, that sucked, please stop. And so you see a lot of these, like especially the First Crusade, like the Franks would do these big heavy cav charges, and it was just unexpected. They had no idea that it was going to happen. It wasn't common in their warfare at the time. But as you see the Crusades move on, they start adapting, they start matching, they start finding tactics that do work. It's not a surprise out of nowhere strategy. It's now like, oh, all those heavy guys, they're going to run straight at us. How do we stop that? You know, so you're starting to see changes over time. But yeah, when it was introduced, heavy cav was not popular, and they didn't have a great answer right away, which is why there were so many of those very one-sided battles in the First Crusade.
And if you see some of the depictions of Saladin and his armor, wise where you'd have plate linked with chains, it was more of an Ottoman, almost Turkish style. That, if you're equating that with heavy, that's different than, of course, just having padded gamizon wise. But it was a lot lighter, still would cover a lot of your vitals and be more maneuverable. However, that was still for the upper crust. You got sometimes with the Mamluks where they had some kind of a lamellar, but that still wasn't even that widely used. But other than that, yeah, the cavalry was still very much so important.
Yeah, I think the Mamluks we can look at as an example of, an Islamic heavy cavalry in the 13th century. They started to, and part of that was adapting some of the ideas that the Franks had. There was a lot of back and forth in terms of technology with the Crusades, with the Muslims started adopting the heavy Frankish spear. The Crusaders started, using some Muslim weapons, like some of their like styles of archery and stuff like that. So, but yeah, the Mamluks definitely, that's an example we can start looking at a heavy cavalry that the Saracens were using pretty regularly, out of Egypt and that kind of thing. So,
but it was rare. That's the thing. It was rare. Like it existed, but it was not like, every garrison had just like a bunch of awesome Egyptian heavy cav.
Right.
It wasn't Age of Empires. We didn't have that technology, the ability to just recruit at your barracks.
Yeah, it was the top of the top who had, that kind of equipment.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Let's see. I saw a really good one up here.
Good question, by the way. Good question.
We kind of already got. Oh, this is from Michael Brown. A little contribution. Thanks, Michael Brown. Appreciate that. Here's a good one. How would medieval armies keep up morale?
Well, I mean, you feed your army.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep. Good answer.
An army marches on its stomach, right?
Beer, ale, songs. There were more than just soldiers traveling with the army.
Who else traveled with the army, Mike?
People who fixed shoes, right?
Yeah, people who fixed shoes. You would have bards and the like, cooks and washerwomen and every logistical thing you could think of. All those jobs had to be done. So a camp on campaign was effectively a small town every time they stopped. So
yeah, definitely.
And also
gambling.
Yeah, throwing dice apparently was huge. Just throwing dice,
True.
Yeah, it was ridiculously popular. Throwing dice. I created a Gluck House board one time. It's like a medieval gambling game. I know I played it with Mike. I don't know if I played it with Spencer.
I don't think I played it with you, but I played it before. It's fun.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a really fun game. And if you played it with dollars instead of just your medieval coins, I actually can see how someone that has no TV, no video games, and you might die the next day would do that nonstop without sleeping, and blow all your money on it. I get it.
It's very addictive and a lot of fun.
And let's be honest, especially with the Third Crusade, when they had a lot of their beliefs, not try to just make it because it's a Christian channel funded, but their beliefs really did make them go, I got to keep on going. I want to do this because this is the right thing to do. That really kept up the morale.
Yeah, there's definitely the religion aspect to morale too.
Yeah, I think that was a whole element to the Crusades that you wouldn't have found in regular types of warfare. And another thing too, we mentioned kind of songs. Richard the Lionheart was a musician. He played and composed his own music, and that was a thing. That would have been a thing that knights would have maybe done in their downtime, would be to play music together, sing common troubadour tunes, which would have been the popular music of the day. So this is a good one here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, no. I was just saying, kind of like the modern military. We're talking about cadences when we're marching. They actually had songs that they would sing while they marched to not let you think about, oh, this rock's still in my shoe this whole time, and more think about, I can't wait to get to next time. So, yeah.
Rousing songs too, exciting songs. I imagine listening to them today might not be, but back then, it would have been their rock music.
Yeah, definitely. All right, this is a kind of a more specialized question. King Carlos asked, the Arabic guards of Emperor Friedrich II, did they have to convert or did they stay Muslims? There's always a discussion about them. I think they had to convert, but I don't know. I believe they did not. There was a long, Sicily was conquered by the Normans in the 11th century, and there were Muslim military units there for a long time after that. I mean, Frederick II came around in the 13th century, and even by then there were still these Saracen guards and that kind of thing. My understanding is there was not a requirement for that. So you know some of this history, Spencer?
I do a little bit. So they still talk in tales. It's been more of a Hollywood thing where they like to use the whole, you join the side and you have to convert to what side is right. But it became more of a thing about money and allegiance, to where the Saracens and the guard were like, hey, we pledge our allegiance to you. Here's our contract, even though we may not have the same beliefs, but you're paying. So that's more what we care about. Not everybody had to convert at that point. It was not something forced. That's something we see in Hollywood a lot, because it's a good conflict point.
Yeah, and kind of the reverse of that too. El Cid, during part of his career, he was actually a mercenary captain for the Moorish king of Zaragoza. So that was kind of the reverse of that, a Christian who he and his boys were in the employ of a well-to-do, Moorish king, ruler of Zaragoza. So you have that same dynamic.
Yeah, another one that I always see, and this goes against what everyone who watches Kingdom of Heaven thinks. So spoilers / trigger warnings to the people that love that movie so much you can't accept that it's not totally historically accurate. It's Templars. Templars are always such jerks in every movie they're in. They're just the worst. They're always the guys that are like, I know better, and you're just a stupid idiot from another religion. The Templars were one of the most opening and welcoming. So in college, I had to write papers on some of the letters that they wrote, and one Templar got into a fist fight with a new Templar that had just arrived, but the first one had been there for a while. He got into a fist fight because the new one saw a bunch of Muslims praying. He like got in one of their faces and picked them up. The first one was like, let them pray, let them do whatever they want. That's their thing. And he basically like fought one of his own guys in a church to let them pray where they agreed that they could pray. That's not the kind of stuff. That's not the Guy de Lusignan in Kingdom of Heaven and his crew. It's a totally different attitude. People were pretty accepting back then, like way more than what we'd like to think that they are.
And there's a kind of code of conduct once there's still peace times, especially saw this a lot during Jerusalem, where they were still, especially the Saracens, were allowing other people that were already stationed there that were Christian. So they didn't say, "I'll get out right now," until certain points later. It was more like, "Hey, we're okay now. Once we get on the field, now we have our beefs and we'll fight." But there were definitely times of, "Hey, let them do their thing. Let us do our thing."
Yeah, if you don't mind, Kyle, I'm actually going to tell that story you're referencing just because it's from one of my favorite books.
All right.
So that comes to us from a Saracen writer from Syria named Usama ibn Munkid, who, if you want to read an interesting piece of writing from this period, pick up his book. It's got a ton of great stuff about medieval warfare. But yeah, Usama ibn Munkid, he was a diplomat, and he would often go to Jerusalem to deal with the Templars. And he talks about this. He talks about how there was a place in the Templars, either their church or their fortress at Jerusalem at the Temple Mount, where they would set up a thing for him to pray. And he was there praying, and there was he calls him a newcomer from the West who kept saying, "Hey, you're praying in the wrong direction." And the Templars basically told this guy, "Hey, listen, leave him alone. We're setting this. We have this set up for him." And he actually says in that little account, he says, "These Templars who were my friends," he describes them as his friends. And I had a guy who knows Arabic real well who told me that word that was used for friends was not kind of like a superficial type of friendship. He was talking about like a real friendship, which I found that fascinating. So anyway, that's from Usama ibn Munkid. It's one of our earliest accounts of the Templars, interestingly. So,
and they were not jerks.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what historians take from that episode is that, especially in these places like frontier societies where you have kind of these two cultures existing on a frontier in some way, you get certain types of understanding that maybe people from more on the home front are not going to grasp as easily. So
yeah.
Which was a really cool point that for the viewers, when we were talking about things that we want to do for Knights of the Cross, we want to show both sides of the coin. Even though it'll be predominantly, yes, it's a Christian channel, where on the Crusaders, King Richard, but we'll still show other parts of the Muslims and the Saracens and just all around, because they all had interesting beliefs and they all had interesting interactions.
Yeah, that's where the cool drama comes from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Richard the Lionheart actually knighted some of, I don't remember if it was Saladin's brothers, some of his servants.
Some of his guard?
Yeah, Abu Bakr was one of them. He was Aladil's chamberlain. But some of his warriors who, it's kind of interesting, after the first Battle of Jaffa, apparently Richard entertained some of Aladil's Mamluks, and they were like sitting around laughing, having a good time. And I mean, this is in our source material. I mean, it just kind of shows how complicated some of this could be. And it's quite apparent that Richard formed friendships with certain members of the high level Muslim nobility, to the point where he knighted some of them. He did like a knighting ceremony on them. So, I mean, this just kind of shows us this stuff is way more complicated than I think Kingdom of Heaven really over.
Yeah.
Well, Hollywood likes to make the good guys and the bad guys, right? When opposed to that whole, it depends on what side you're on, and to that whole warrior mentality. I mean, Kyle, Mike, we fought people in combats where you have heated things, but then after you're done with, you're still okay. Or some of the Battle Nation stuff I've done where it's steel fighting, and you're actually maybe trying to knock the other person out, and your armor's protecting you, right? And we have these rules, we've agreed to these rules, but after the fight's over, we shake hands, we might actually let the other person actually get to know them. So
You hug, have a beer.
yeah, and
It's
even though they're trying to
crazy.
kill each other, same levels.
Some of the hardest fights that I've ever been in afterwards, I almost felt closer to the guy I was fighting. And yeah, some of my best friends have knocked me out. Like it's great. It's there's a bond there in combat that not a lot of people really get it.
No,
Yeah,
but it's interesting.
people that do fighting sports, they get that. I think that those same people who do fighting sports now would have been the same people who would have gone for knighthood back then, or been involved in these kinds of things.
Yeah. And if you so happen met a warrior on the other side of the field that you're trying to kill at that point, but if you come across and you're not your job and you don't have a blood feud, you'd be like, oh, hey, yeah, that was really interesting. Or you never know. You never know.
That thing he did was really cool, man.
And now we're not trying to kill each other, so that's okay. Yeah. But anyway, sorry, getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
No, I think we're really kind of coming to the end here. I wanted to jump to one question here from Tom that he asked at the beginning, and Tom's a good friend of the channel. So, did Richard record any of his personal experiences in single combat? He did write about, in some of his letters back home during the Third Crusade, he did record some of his experiences. If you want to read about them, you can get Ashgate's Press's The Conquest of Jerusalem, the Third Crusade, a collection of documents from the Third Crusade. Pick that up. You can read some of Richard's letters from the period. So, yeah, I think that's I think we're kind of coming to the end, guys. I mean, we've hit an hour here.
There's still so much to talk about.
Yeah, and one last little thing, like if you want also other interesting single combat that's not necessarily all Richard, William Marshall had some really great tellings and some very documented events.
Favorite night ever.
Before we kind of close things off, I mean, did you guys see any questions in there that you wanted to I guess we better grab this super chat real quick. This is from Michael Brown. Thank you, sir. What was so disastrous for King Sebastian of Portugal during the battle 1578 versus Morocco? They had much better weapons. I got to admit, I don't really know anything about this. Does anybody?
That's a bit past my time period.
Past the time period I studied.
I'm not 100%, but I don't know how many it was logistics, but I'd have to look more into it. But just in general, looking at battles, you may have the best people, the best trained men, and then you don't know where to put them. And if you can't get them the right place at the right time, it doesn't do you any good. So those are some aspects.
Geography can ruin a battle. When you look at Russia.
Yeah, no one conquers Russia.
Right?
General Winter is undefeated.
Yes.
But did you guys have any final questions you wanted to jump on before we close things out? I don't want to, close that window before you guys had a chance to.
I saw a quick one that I thought was fun. Somebody asked how they would have cleaned and maintained the steel back then, the chainmail. And the answer to that usually is squires. They had a really cool way of cleaning chainmail where they would get a barrel, throw the chain shirt into it, fill the barrel with sand, and roll it down a hill. And then the squire would roll it back up and roll it back down. And then to keep things from rusting, it was a lot of animal fat. You'd go to the kitchen and get the leftover grease and rub down your steel with some good old-fashioned bacon grease.
Yeah, nothing like a bacon sword. It smells great and makes you want to fight.
And then when it gets hot, your armor just smells of bacon, and you're just happy all day long.
Oh man, that would smell terrible.
It would be bad.
Because it would smell like bacon for 60 seconds, and then it's going to smell like sweaty dude, horse, like moldy fat. Oh gosh. Yeah, and I know how fighters stink already just from fighting in their gear. Like if you got a room, like a gym with 100 dudes in armor in there, that gym's stinky. It's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Cool. So anything else you guys want to jump on in here? Or?
No, I just want to say thank you once again.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It's always great to have you guys here with us. I'm really excited to have you guys on the project, and I know it's been great so far with you guys. It's going to be even better once we actually make the full-on show. So
It's going to be cool.
Oh, callback. Wait, I'm ready.
All right. So before we close, I'm going to just plug one more time, christianchannel.com/Knights of the Cross. This is all about our upcoming TV series, Knights of the Cross, a TV show about the Crusades for christianchannel.com. Guys, if you will go to christianchannel.com/Knights of the Cross, check out the page, learn all about what we're doing here. You can watch the trailer. You can find out how you can help us make this show happen. This is going to be an historically faithful TV series about the Third Crusade, Saladin, Richard, all the drama. It's going to be really good. So we want you guys to check this out, get in there, help us out. So, all right. That's
awesome.
Pretty much it, guys. I think we're going to say good night, good afternoon. We'll talk to everybody soon, and see you later.
Adios.
Bye, guys.
See y'all.